Randy, man, macho of it, Randy Savage. I
just see the body, oh baby. Everybody, Ventura, the new Intercounty, welcome the champion of the world, Continental Heavyweight World.
Randy Savage once revealed the 5 players he hates the most, and what's shocking is that every single one of them is a huge name. It really makes you wonder what was going on behind the scenes with these superstars. Well, today, we're going to find out, so let's get started. 1. Hulk Hogan. Out of everyone Randy Savage ever crossed paths with, no rivalry cut deeper than his with Hulk Hogan. On camera, they were the perfect tag team, the Mega Powers. 2 superstars, standing shoulder to shoulder, shaking hands in front of thousands of cheering fans. But behind the curtain, that handshake was hiding something darker: jealousy, mistrust, and wounded pride. Savage had always believed that Hogan was an ego-driven politician, someone who played the backstage game better than anyone else. Hogan had the charm, the fame, and the creative pull that could make or break anyone's career, and Savage knew it. For a while, he tried to ride along, hoping that their partnership would lift them both. But instead, it only reminded him of how much the spotlight seemed to belong to Hogan. Every time Savage did something great, Hogan somehow managed to stand just a little bit taller in the picture. And then came Miss Elizabeth, the woman who was not only Savage's close to her in storylines. Savage didn't see it as just entertainment. He saw it as a man crossing boundaries. The smiles, the hugs, the protectiveness Hogan showed toward Liz, all of it began to eat away at Savage. He became paranoid, convinced that Hogan's attention toward Elizabeth was real, not scripted. And that's when the friendship started to fall apart. What happened next became a wrestling drama. The Mega Powers exploded, not just as a storyline, but as a reflection of what was actually happening backstage. Savage accused Hogan of stealing his spotlight, his fans, and his woman. Hogan, in turn, brushed it off as Randy being too intense. But to Savage, it wasn't paranoia. It was betrayal. 2. Vince McMahon. At one point, their relationship was built on trust and respect. Vince saw Randy not just as a superstar, but as one of the key faces of the WWF. Savage gave everything to that company: his time, his health, his voice, and his passion. But over time, that friendship would shatter in a way that left wounds neither of them ever healed from. It all started in the early 90s, when Savage was still ready to perform, still hungry to wrestle. But Vince had other plans. He believed Randy's days as an in-ring performer were behind him, and he wanted him to transition into a full-time commentator. For Savage, that suggestion felt like a slap in the face. He wasn't ready to sit behind a microphone, not when he still felt like he could steal the show inside the ring. To him, Vince wasn't just making a business decision. He was taking away the one thing Savage lived for. The tension grew quietly at first, but eventually, it turned into a full-blown fallout. Savage felt betrayed, like the company he helped build was now pushing him aside. And when he made the decision to jump to WCW, it wasn't just a career move. It was a statement. He left the WWF behind and took something valuable with him: his Slim Jim endorsement deal. That one move reportedly cost McMahon millions, and it symbolized just how personal things had become between them. After that, their relationship was done. McMahon never mentioned Savage on WWF television again for years. It was as if he had been erased from history. Fans speculated endlessly about what really happened, and then came the rumors about Stephanie McMahon, stories that were never proven, but only deepened the mystery behind their bitter silence. Neither man ever spoke publicly about it in detail, but the tension was clear. Ric Flair. Their problems began back in the early 90s when Flair arrived in the WWF. Right away, the two were thrown into a major storyline involving Miss Elizabeth, Savage's ex-wife. Flair claimed, in classic Nature Boy style, that he had been with Elizabeth before Savage ever was, even showing doctored photos as proof. For the fans, it was an entertaining drama, but for Savage, it was deeply personal. That wasn't just a storyline to him. That was his real life being used for ratings. He was furious. To him, Flair had crossed a line that should have never been touched. When both men ended up in WCW a few years later, the tension didn't magically disappear. They had to work together again, but the old wounds were still open. Flair, known for his charm and confidence, often found Savage's intensity hard to deal with. He later admitted in interviews that working with Savage was challenging, calling him paranoid and difficult backstage. But from Savage's perspective, that paranoia was just passion, the kind of dedication he demanded from himself and everyone around him. If Flair was late to a meeting or didn't take a segment seriously, Savage took it personally. Their rivalry became one of respect and resentment mixed into one. Both men pushed each other to deliver great matches, but they couldn't stand being in the same room once the cameras stopped rolling. Savage often felt Flair was too political, too comfortable playing the backstage game, while Flair thought Savage was too tightly wound, too emotional for the business. 4. The Snake Roberts. It all began when Roberts targeted Savage during one of the most shocking and unsettling storylines of the early 90s. Roberts was playing his sinister heel role to perfection, cold, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. But what made this feud truly unforgettable was just how far it went. During one infamous segment, Roberts tied Savage up in the ropes and unleashed a live cobra that actually bit him on live television. The crowd gasped, Elizabeth screamed in horror, and Savage, ever the professional, tried to stay calm as blood ran down his arm. It was one of those moments that blurred the line between performance and reality, because behind that chilling scene, the tension was very real. Savage was furious with Roberts afterward. Even though Jake had assured him the snake was devenomed and safe, Randy didn't believe it for a second. He thought Roberts was reckless, the kind of guy who would push a stunt too far just to make a scene unforgettable. To Savage, that wasn't creativity, that was danger. And what made it worse was how often the storyline put Miss Elizabeth in the middle of it all. Savage had always been overprotective of her, sometimes to the point of obsession. The idea of another man threatening or even pretending to hurt her, especially someone as unpredictable as Roberts, made him lose his temper instantly. Jake later revealed that before the segment aired, Savage had been so nervous and suspicious that he demanded Roberts test the snake's bite on himself first, just to prove it wouldn't be fatal. Roberts did it, and only then did Savage agree to go through with the angle. That's how deep his distrust ran. But even after that, the damage was done. Savage could never shake the feeling that Roberts had crossed a line, that he'd taken advantage of his trust and put both him and Elizabeth at risk. 5. Males Steele. Their rivalry might look comical on the surface, the wild, hairy Steele chasing after Miss Elizabeth while the jealous Savage lost his mind. But behind the scenes, there was nothing funny about it. For Savage, that entire storyline hit way too close to home. George Steele was known for being a gentle, kind-hearted guy in real life. Nothing like the grunting, unpredictable animal he played in the ring. But when WWF Creative pitched the idea of him showing affection toward Miss Elizabeth, Savage's on-screen manager and real-life wife, it created immediate tension. To most wrestlers, it was just another storyline. To Savage, it was crossing the line. He didn't like anyone, not even a harmless, beloved veteran like Steele, getting too close to Elizabeth. The idea was simple. Steele would play the lovesick monster, falling for Elizabeth and causing chaos between her and Savage. But Savage wasn't just acting when he got angry. That rage you saw in his eyes on television, it was real. He was obsessively protective of Elizabeth, both on and off camera. Every look, every touch, every improvised moment made him uncomfortable. The crew often said you could feel the tension backstage. Savage would watch every segment closely, making sure Steele didn't go off script even slightly. For Steele, it was a tricky situation. He wanted to perform the role and make the feud memorable, but he could sense that Savage's emotions were genuine. In interviews years later, Steele admitted that Savage's intensity made the whole thing awkward and uneasy. There was no joking around, no relaxed banter between takes. Just Randy, fully locked into his character, guarding Elizabeth like a hawk. And while their match's aggressiveness,